This is Steve, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. Today, we will be recapping all of the games from Thursday through at least Sunday night. I believe I will be able to record after the Monday night game, edit that in here, and it should all be good. Also, Snickers is coming along for the ride, so if you see my arms doing something weird down here, you know I'm just petting my cat. I have waited as late as I can into the day in order to allow all the injury news to settle, so I will be going through any and all of the injuries that I'm aware of. Just kind of doing a do I believe it, do I not believe it, should I be scared, should I not be scared, thinking about waiver wire things, and at the end of the video I will go over the waiver wires, some of my favorite options. I'll have timestamps on this video, at least I should, so if you want to see specific games, you can jump to those games, and if you just want to jump to the waiver wire options, you can do that too. Let's begin with the Thursday night game all the way back then with Buffalo versus LA. 31-10 for Buffalo. LA did not look great. I think some of those offensive line issues for LA have reared their head. I'm not too concerned in general for that offensive LA. I feel about the same as I did to begin the year. Maybe a little extra concern for Matt Stafford's health until that offensive line can get better, or maybe they play some less scary defenses compared to Buffalo's. And there's the other bit of news as far as Buffalo's defense goes. Yeah, they're quite legit, and they don't even have Tre'Davious White yet. Josh Allen's Josh Allen. What did we expect? Awesome. So obviously all of the Buffalo stats are going to be on the Buffalo side, LA stats on the LA side. That's how it will always go. I can't move my cursor around here. This is just an image. So just follow along. Devin Singletary, hey, it looks like if you got Devin Singletary, you probably got yourself a decent deal. He seems to, for the most part, be the guy. This was a game script you would hope for more rushing, I guess. So maybe a little bit of caution into the wind with Singletary. Zach Moss got some work, so it felt more Singletary-oriented. I guess it got a little mashed up there late game, and all of a sudden Zach Moss got some work for some reason. Not even late game, like mid to late. And James Cook started off with a fumble. Not great. It's a guy, it's a wait and see. If you do have him on your roster, I wouldn't be too afraid to move him if you need to, but I wouldn't be in a rush to get rid of him quite yet either. This is week one. Rookies. They drafted him fairly highly for, you have to assume, for a reason. So we'll see on that. And then Steph Diggs, Gabe Davis. If you weren't on the Gabe Davis train already, there you go. That's why we all love him. One thing I am upset about on here, there are no targets, so my apologies for that. Sometimes I'll have to just go look those up separately. So just 5 targets for Gabe Davis in this game. I think this is kind of a to-be-expected type of game. This is why you want these players on this offense. There's always going to be a good chance for a touchdown. It's a little bit surprising. Jamison Crowder mixing in there, and he looked pretty darn good. Isaiah McKenzie got that touchdown. This seemed like a game where Isaiah McKenzie would get a lot of work, so that was not too exciting. There are probably better prospects out there to take a chance on. Would have liked to see more targets for Isaiah in this game. Dawson Knox was a disappointment, but he's a tight end, and I will always say this, so I did quite a bit of research in the off-season. There are videos on those. One thing that I determined for the tight ends was even the best of them, meaning Mark Andrews, pretty much had a 50-50 randomized shot against any of the other tight end starters. So it's a position that even the best aren't reliable. Moving on to the Rams, Matt Stafford, yucky game. Cooper Kupp owners are happy. Allen Robinson did not get ignored for any particular reason, as in he should have received more targets. So concerning for Allen Robinson, I would not give up on A-Rob. Then Darrell Henderson was the starter. I own Darrell Henderson. I am a fantasy football owner of Darrell Henderson. I can just say this much. I'm happy with this game. I don't know that I believe it quite yet, especially with Kyron Williams' injury, which was going to be 6 to 8 weeks for Kyron Williams. There may have been a plan to get him in there more over Akers, and then that plan got scrapped. So I'm still a little bit concerned that the choice of Darrell Henderson was either forced because the game plan was Kyron Williams and Darrell Henderson, or it might have just strictly been a game plan choice, especially with Van Jefferson being out. They may have felt that they just needed more oomph, a little bit of spice in their lineup, with Darrell Henderson being, kind of a playmaker guy who can take something from the short yardage and make a big splash play with it. I'm not throwing up the confetti yet in regards to his usage. Cam Akers owners on the other end of that wouldn't throw in the towel quite yet. I would rather have a Khalil Herbert, a Jamal Williams. He would not be at the top of the waiver wire if he was available and on my list of waiver wire options that I have. Don't feel that you have to hold him and give him a chance, even though I'm saying I don't think that the world has burned yet for him. There may be an opportunity with that injury. Tyler Higbee, this is the type of game I think you can pretty much kind of just expect from him. And Allen Robinson, wait and see. Should be better days ahead. Another injury for the Rams. The center for the Rams is out 2 to 4 weeks. So just more concerns there. That run game shouldn't be incredibly strong as far as running. But that's the nice thing about Darrell Henderson. He can catch the ball. So PPR, it's good. Moving on to the Eagles and the Lions. Let's start out. A little bit of an item of news here. Amon-Ra St. Brown had set some sort of a target record for his first X games played. And maybe this is what it was. Over his last 8 games, he's had, I think, over 30% of the team's target share. When Jameson Williams gets back, that will be something that should eat away a little bit at Amon-Ra St. Brown. Something to just be aware of. He might be a good trade target in 5 weeks or something. So in this game, we saw, I think the Eagles go out to an early lead. Lions fight back, maybe take the lead, and the Eagles end up winning. Lions proved it last year. Man, they're a scrappy team. They're not the world's worst team, and Jared Goff can do okay when he has talent. Let's start out with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts did Jalen Hurts things. I believe they could have had another touchdown or two that were very close to. So it could have been an even bigger week. Miles Sanders, this is not a surprise to me. I said it in the projections video, or maybe it was the draft, one of the running backs draft rankings video for Miles Sanders. He would have been higher. We all think a lot differently about him in the fantasy community if he just got any touchdowns last season, starting off with 1 touchdown this year. As long as he's healthy, man, I'm rolling him out there in a lot of weeks, we'll say. Maybe not a must start quite yet. A.J. Brown is the beast that we all thought he could be in this system, with Devontae Smith on the opposite side, with Dallas Goedert work in the middle of the field, Jalen Hurts forcing defenses to always know where he is at on the field and account for that. This is a scary team. I don't think A.J. Brown will disappear any weeks, but we knew Devontae Smith might, and he truly did this week. I think you were able to get Devontae Smith at a fairly decent price in drafts this year, so I wouldn't be freaking out about that. Not a pretty start for Devontae Smith. I will say one thing for all of these early games. Things did not look pretty for the first half. Don't draw too many conclusions from week 1, but also don't ignore it. And then Dallas Goedert, only 3 receptions for 60 yards, and that was on 4 targets. A little bit concerning, but once again, you were able to draft him fairly late. This was one reason that I did like Dallas Goedert, this 20-yard average that you're seeing over there for him per catch. Big wide receivers on each side of him really is going to open up that center of the field for him. Moving on to the Lions. Already talked about Amon-Ra. I think that was on 13 targets. So definitely a good sign for Amon-Ra St. Brown here in week 1. The weapon of DJ Shark being in there, I think, will be helping him. And other than that, Josh Reynolds was a guy I was keeping an eye on. 1 reception, 28 yards. If Amon-Ra is going to continue to get peppered with targets like this, then it's probably not going to be there for him. DJ Shark, nice waiver wire guy. I had him higher up than I wanted to in my draft, pre-draft rankings, so there was a reason for that, because, well, he's jaded me in the past, but there's definitely an opportunity for him, and you can see he took advantage of that week 1 here. Then DeAndre Swift obviously freaking killed it. Jamal Williams is going to get in there and limit that upside for DeAndre Swift. We knew this. Obviously, he's not going to get 2 touchdowns every single week, though. He is just a guy to come and loosen things up for DeAndre Swift, so that way Swift can average 9.6 yards when he's running. Yes, TJ Hawkinson would be the only other one to speak about. It looks like he's just going to be in your normal tight end there with DJ Shark. Better weapons in the wide receiver core. Looks like Jared Goff's going to take advantage of that and not have to force things to TJ Hawkinson. But when it's there, I'm sure TJ will have some great games this year too. The narratives look like we were expecting for the big names for the Lions. This was a high-scoring game. Don't expect all of their games to be this high-scoring. So we'll see how things go when things are a little less in their favor as far as fantasy points goes. On to San Francisco and the Bears. A lot was made of the weather for this game. It died down in time for the start of the game, and then late third quarter or so, I guess it started raining. I picked up the game, well, I think somewhere around that time, and for me, I thought it was really just the final, 12 minutes or so when it became a monsoon and just really turned into a wet weather game, one where you would take that into account for fantasy. So a lot of the game was not played in any kind of crazy weather conditions. Don't think it had too much of an effect on the weather. Early game was just like a lot of the other early games on Sunday. It just wasn't too pretty. Trey Lance, 13 for 28, 164 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. This was kind of what we were concerned about for him. But as far as fantasy goes, 13 carries for 50 yards, 54 yards. So that is that floor that we do like for him. You're not dropping Trey Lance. I do think, however, that this was as much of an indictment's not the right word, but we'll just use it anyways. A verification of what I had to say about Chicago's defense, man. They're a legit defense, and they have been. And because they're just not a great team, it's overlooked. But that defense is going to help keep that offense in games, help Justin Fields. Speaking of, we'll get to him on those. Only 17 attempts in this game wasn't too great. Trey Lance is going to have to be more accurate. We'll just say that in order for this to work. And he's going to have to do it quickly because currently he does have somebody sitting right behind him. But I do think that he has a decent leash. Some people are saying, in 3 weeks, he's going to get his job taken away from him. And I guess that is possible. There is a coach there who has promised a lot and had a lot of promise and gotten pretty far for San Francisco for a lot of years. There could be some pressures on him to keep that job. If that were to end up being the case, then yeah, maybe he would make a quarterback change in order to save the season and save his job. And if Deebo Samuel wasn't already a must-start guy, the injury to Elijah Mitchell, who will be out for 2 months, I think should settle in that Deebo is a must-start receiver. Once again, this was some of my concerns with a lot of these guys, and the rushing was why it was less of a concern for Deebo. But that Trey Lance, his accuracy is really going to determine the ceiling for all of these guys. But I believe Deebo had 8 targets. I'm just trying to verify that. Yeah, that is correct. 8 targets for Deebo, so he had the targets were there. So that's also great. So don't be too concerned if you're a Deebo owner with this 2 receptions for 14 yards. Be happy he got you a touchdown this week. That leaves us with the question of who is Elijah Mitchell's replacement? So it will be between Jeff Wilson and Jordan Mason seem to be the front runners as far as the backup. Put a gun to my head, I'm going to just say Jeff Wilson because he was used this week. But 2.4 average yards a rush for him. That's not too pretty. That looks a lot like it did last year when he came back. So I don't know that he was ever some top tier talent anyways. Just always seemed to be a guy that the coaching staff has liked. And injuries may have taken away whatever oomph he did have, because he did have some. So we'll see. I guess my answer is I don't really want to mess with that too hard. At least if you're spending fab on Jeff Wilson or Jordan Mason, I think there are going to be some other guys that you might want to spend fab on more so than them, or keep it for the future with more clear situations, because there will be more running back injuries as the season goes along. That I can promise you. Other than that, Brandon Ayuk, 2 for 40, 1 for 7 yards. Yeah, he's a flex option guy. Not the best week. Once again, it's going to come down to Trey Lance and his accuracy. So some of you owners of like Brandon Ayuk and even Debo, maybe you want a quarterback change. And Juwan Jennings he's a guy. He's not a nobody. I am not seeking him out on the waiver wire. Which brings us to Chicago. Justin Fields, 8 of 17. Tale of two halves for sure. Didn't look good to start out with, and then looked like the play calling maybe settled in. Justin Fields himself settled in. The offense as a whole settled in. And I heard someone say that Khalil Herbert was more involved on the more successful drives. He had the higher yardage average. He got the touchdown. I don't believe David Montgomery got any of the goal line carries. That's not promising, so I will say I may have messed up on David Montgomery with my pre-season draft status on him and thoughts on him, which means my thoughts on Khalil Herbert were wrong too. We learn, we adapt. This is something I am believing in from week 1. Khalil Herbert is a must-own for sure. I already thought he was a must-own, though. But he may be much more valuable, much quicker, even with David Montgomery out there sooner. So we'll see. Obviously, David Montgomery still got the workload, but maybe he's on a leash there. I would be concerned if I was a David Montgomery owner, but happy that he had 3 receptions for 24 yards. That's always good. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Dave Montgomery owners. Who do the Bears play next week? The Bears play the Packers next week. I don't think I would want to roll David Montgomery out there if I could avoid it. I'll put it like that. If I could avoid it, I'm going to avoid DeMont next week. Obviously, Dante Pettis, 1 reception, 51 yards. Great. You just based on the amount of throws alone, this is a weird game. Darnell Mooney's the only receiver that you want on this team. So this offense should be better than what it was last year. And they're still feeling each other out and getting used to it. But that defense being, I think, legit should help things out and give that offense more opportunities. And then Cole Kmet, I was totally wrong on. I do believe he was kind of like my guy this last week. I thought he would get peppered with targets. I'll conclude the Bears with this. The box score is less exciting than what the team looked like in the second half of the game. And also, the rain is not necessarily an excuse for why this box score looks so piss poor. Still to be determined there. Moving on to Pittsburgh versus the Bengals. Let's try to pick up this pace. Mr. Trubisky, this was a bit of a weird game. It seemed like Pittsburgh's offense didn't get too many opportunities because the Bengals kept turning it over with like short yardage. I think, did they get I think Pittsburgh had a pick 6 in there pretty early on, and it was a weird flow to this game, but it's not like Pittsburgh's offense was taking advantage of all those turnovers either. So, yeah, that was not too pretty. Mitch managed just barely for his team. I have heard that the offensive line didn't look too great. I think that is an offensive line that should be better than last year. Maybe it didn't look like it this week and probably has to grow into being a better offensive line than the one that they had season long last year. But either way, it's just not going to be a great offensive line for Najee. Speaking of, let's get to the injuries for this game. Najee Harris with a hamstring. TJ Watt. They do not believe it is a torn pec. I believe I just saw that news come out hour ago or so. So, yeah, that hurts the Steelers' defense. They still have other guys, so it's still going to be a good defense without TJ Watt, but just maybe not over the top. Excellent. They're not some sort of smash, hey, I'm playing this player because he's playing up against Pittsburgh Steelers defense without TJ Watt. Other than that, Chase Claypool getting in some work, some of those carries, I think along the goal line. I think he came close to a touchdown. That has been part of what he does for the team, and maybe they'll be able to mix that in a little bit more now that they'll be able to spread the field a little bit larger. Pat Freiermuth, I was all up on that this week. Loved this game, this matchup for him. Be happy, Pat Freiermuth owners. Sucks he didn't get that touchdown. Deontay Johnson, 7 receptions, 55 yards. That's good. He got targeted. Chase Claypool, I'd like to see a little bit more efficiency on his receptions. And then, of course, George Pickens. If you drafted him, you didn't draft him for week 1, and you're holding on to him, you're not making a rash decision based on this 1 week up against a good Bengals defense. But there were a lot of opportunities. Yuck as far as the Pittsburgh offense. Moving on to more yuck. Joe Burrow had an ugly game, but salvaged it just fine for fantasy football. That is the nice thing about him, this offense. They can start off terrible and put it together quickly for big amounts of yards and a couple of touchdowns. I'm trying to think of a joke. So Joe Burrow after the game, I guess for I don't know if it was hours or 40 minutes later, was just sitting at his on the bench in the locker room, still not showered, still had his gear on, unchanged, just looking forward. So yeah, expect this week not to happen again, hopefully for him. Joe Mixon, obviously, this was not a great game script for him, and he still put up 82 yards on the ground, had 7 receptions for 63 yards. You love to see that stuff. This is why he was where he was for me in my draft rankings. He does solid no matter what, and this week wasn't even a great game script for him. Joe Burrow getting you those yards again with his feet, that's really nice. That helps salvage the day. That is something that I saw his rookie season. That could be a huge weapon. It didn't really quite materialize after his injury and through last year, but I would expect that to be a part of his game to some extent. Jamar Chase, what do I got to say? He's Jamar Chase. Hayden Hurst, 5 for 46. He's on my watch list. Tight ends are tight ends. There's only so many of them that should be rostered, and there's a whole bunch of them that shouldn't be rostered who are just as good as some of the guys who are going to get rostered. So, I'm not... It really depends who you have to determine if you want to jump ship and jump on a Hayden Hurst. I think Tyler Boyd's more of the guy who's going to benefit from the T. Higgins injury. Speaking of injuries... Bengals injury, T. Higgins concussion. This is part of the reason why I drafted Tyler Boyd last season, was in case one of those guys went down. I was then he's great, and in the meantime, he should be a great flex option. And unfortunately, he wasn't really a great flex option until late season, where he actually kind of became a starting option. So I do expect him to be better than he was last year, with or without T. Higgins on the field. But without T. Higgins on the field, he's obviously pretty much a must-start kind of guy. And I do want to say, as far as T. Higgins, last news update from Zach Taylor, the head coach, was that the conversations are encouraging. So I take that to mean either his conversations with the medical staff or like T. Higgins knows what day of the week it is. One or the other. Either way, it's encouraging. Pretty early injury if you're not aware of when that happened in the game. Fairly early on in the game before there was too much of a chance for him to shine. So you're not worried about T. Higgins. And as far as coming back from injury, concussions do not have enough. Once a player's back from a concussion, they should be at like 100% of their normal playing ability. So, yeah, that's the Bengals. Moving on to New England, Miami. Okay, New England, this is really easy. So, first of all, injuries for New England. Mac Jones had some it appears back spasms. They took some x-rays. Those were negative. Nothing wrong there. It's looking like he will be back. I shouldn't say nothing wrong, but doesn't look too concerning. Looks like he'll be back next week. If Mac Jones goes down, you don't want to touch this offense. It does appear Jacoby Myers is essentially maybe going to pick up where he was last year-ish. If there's a receiving option to have, it's probably Jacoby Myers and Devontae Parker still too should have some better weeks. So I'd still want Devontae Parker over Jacoby Myers, but as far as a second receiving option, Jacoby Myers is it, and so far this season better. Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, each coming in there for a few receptions. There's just not a high enough ceiling there. Damian Harris, 9 carries, 48 yards, 2 catches, 10 yards. Did you have any more targets? So he did have 3 targets in the game, so that's nice. Miami's defense should not be ignored. They're a good defense, so keep that in mind as far as this game goes. I'm not freaking out for where I got Damian Harris in a draft. I didn't specifically get him, but I'm not going to be freaking out about anything here. The most concerning part is probably the amount of time that Ty Montgomery got on the field, which I think was more than Ramondre Stevenson, percentage of the snaps. That's scary that snap share would be higher for Ty Montgomery compared to Ramondre Stevenson. So Stevenson is the guy that you're a little bit more concerned about. It's a matchup-based thing. There are going to be games where their run game is dominant, and one or both of them are going to be great. Ramondre, you might need to wait on an injury for that to come to fruition. So we'll see about that. But Damian Harris, not too afraid on from this game. Yeah, that's going to be it for New England there. No injuries that I know of to report for Miami, so that's nice. I would say a bit of a disappointing game for Tua in a sense. It seemed like he could have had a much better day, and he didn't. New offense, learning it, going to take a little time for him to get together. Hopefully that's not a sign of, this entire season. It's just going to be like, if they just had a better quarterback, this team would be amazing. I think Tua has it in him, so we'll see. Nice thing, no interceptions for him today. He didn't lose the game for the team, so that's huge. And especially, I think, early on when you're learning a new system, especially when you're still a quarterback who doesn't have a heck of a lot of experience in the NFL yet, that's probably how you want to play the game anyways. Chase Edmonds, 12 carries, 25 yards. I think that's about what I expected to see from them. A few sweeps with guys like Tyreek, Jalen, Cedric too, I guess. Alec Ingold getting in there for one, whatever the case. It should be a pass-first offense anyways. Raheem Mostert, what did I say? I said a guy probably see 5 to 7 carries or something a game for the most part for him in this offense. And so he'll be a guy who will take advantage of that sometimes, and other times he won't. He's a fringe flex matchup dependent guy. He's going to be gadget-y to some extent and just give Chase Edmonds a bit of a breather because you don't want to give Chase Edmonds too big of a load. He probably can't handle it. So disappointing day for Chase, but you like the 4 targets for 40 yards. Jalen Waddle, I believe, had 5 targets. Could have only had 4, but I believe he had 5 targets. That's going to be a little concerning. He'll have games with more. I don't think he's going to average more than 8 targets though. So, it's going to be relying on him doing what he did in this game. And this is a system that's built for that anyways. He's a guy who's built to do that. So, and I think it was a 52-yard breakaway that he had on a short pass for this touchdown that he had in this game. So, yeah, I'm not going to say it was not encouraging for Jalen Waddle, what you get from him in this game, but there's a reason I didn't have him too highly ranked in my preseason draft stuff, and that, I think, came down to target total. And then you got Tyreek Hill here, who I had to move up a bunch in my rankings, and I did, slowly but surely. I think this is nice to see. He got, used in a couple of different ways from what I saw. I was able to watch some of this game, and 94 yards, not bad. You shouldn't expect this to be Kansas City for Tyreek Hill, but clearly there's enough of a connection there. So, awesome. I would say encouraging. This wasn't a bad game by any means for Tyreek Hill, so that's good. Cedric Wilson coming in there, taking a couple of catches, to be expected. Yeah, oh, do I have to talk about Mike Gesicki? I mean, I think we all knew by now that, not to mess with that this year, right? Moving on to Indianapolis versus the Texans. Another weird game. Start to finish, odd game. One of my takeaways for this game is something that I don't know if I've had the balls to say, but Houston Texans defense is not the worst in all ways. I believe it's their pass defense was actually pretty decent last year. And I think part of the reason I'm not always willing to jump around and say that is because, well, teams don't always need to put up a whole heck of a lot of points to beat the Texans usually. So there is that element to it, but this game ended in a 20-20 tie. Disappointing for Indianapolis, but just a really, really rough start to their game. As far as Indianapolis goes, I'm not concerned about really anything, especially if I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan. Houston, you're happy with the way the team came out. There will be a player, at least, we'll definitely be talking about here for the run game. Indy's got a good run defense, so this is not a good matchup for Houston. I don't know what to expect in a good matchup, though. That's the thing. So nothing new really learned about the Texans, I don't think, in this game, except for frickin' O.J. Howard. So let's start with the Colts. Matt Ryan. Nice game, good yardage total, threw a pick, only one touchdown, but encouraging enough. Once again, weird game script, weird game, just a really, really slow start in general on offense for Indianapolis in this game. Jonathan Taylor, he was not my number one running back because I thought they were going to try to limit his carry load a little bit. But no clear-cut number two. They made a couple of attempts, meager attempts at least, I think, to find someone to help take some of the load off of Jonathan Taylor. Don't think they have that quite yet, at least. And yeah, he had 31 carries. That's pretty sweet. He's not going to have 31 carries every single week, but they were willing to do that in week one. So throw out everything that I said about Jonathan Taylor previously. Other than that, Mike Pittman, I own him, was really happy to see this from him in this game. And I think this is what we can expect from him. Obviously not literally every single week, but Matt Ryan has supported some number one wide receivers in the past, and Michael Pittman is he's built like a wide receiver one. Nyheim Hines, this is, I think, what they said they wanted to get him more involved, and this is about what you should expect from that. So I thought this was actually encouraging for Nyheim Hines. He is a flex-worthy guy for a 0 or a RB2 kind of guy for a 0 RB team, especially in full PPR. Non-PPR, maybe there's other options, but he did better than Dameon Pierce. Ashton Dulin, you may not know him. I know him. So last season, he kind of came out of nowhere, and he's not that bad, man. He can do some stuff. So, no Paris... Well, there was some Paris Campbell equal to Ashton Dulin. It doesn't look like, Paris Campbell has this on lockdown. Michael Straction got in there. He's, I think, a longer, lankier dude, maybe a fly route kind of guy. Just a hodgepodge of dudes getting in there. Alex Pierce didn't get anything of significance this week. I don't know what his snap share was, but probably not incredibly high. There is no wide receiver 2 there. I would be willing to drop Paris Campbell, and Alec Pierce is still a wait-and-see kind of guy, and there's other receivers that you could grab above him. But there, in most leagues, there's going to be receivers on the waiver wire, almost always. But you don't want to miss out on the best of them. So right now is the time of the year where, some guys will jump out that are going to be season-long dudes. So don't be afraid to jump off of Paris Campbell and Alec Pierce if you happen to take that chance. I don't think a lot of people have. Mo Alley Cox, 2 for 26. I don't know. He's a tight end. Moving on to Houston, and the biggest storyline here is Dameon Pierce. I'm not panicking. It would have been awesome if he went out there and he had 80% of the workload. I don't know how much that would have done for fantasy this week anyways against Indianapolis, and maybe that's why Rex Burkhead was out there even more. But it's pretty clear that Dameon Pierce is in at least an early season share, and I think he'll take over more of that workload as things go along. But I don't know that Rex Burkhead will go fully away, and he probably shouldn't. Dameon Pierce owners, we can wake up from our dreams of sweet, sweet victory, come back to reality, accept it, and don't go dropping him. And then Brandon Cooks is what we thought he was, right? I don't think there's anything to be said there. O.J. Howard, don't go chasing touchdowns for tight ends. He had 2 targets. I've just put one caveat on this. I want to see what his snap share was like. I think I heard that they had all 3 tight ends on the field at times. Don't go chasing O.J. Howard, but if you thought Pharaoh Brown was the guy, or if you like me and you liked Brevin Jordan and for some reason you had him on your roster, you can drop him. Nico Collins, 2 for 26. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to have great weeks and not so great weeks. Once again, for Houston, this is a wait and see. I don't know what it looks like when they play teams that are closer to their caliber. It's nice to see them punch up to Indianapolis. On to some injuries for the Falcons. Damian Williams went down. Don't know too much about how long-term that may or may not be. Tyler Algier, you would assume, would be that guy behind him. And I believe Damian Williams went down early enough that I'm not 100% saying this workload for Cordero Patterson is for sure. But he got it this week. 22 carries, 120 yards. He did something with it good. 1 touchdown. I thought he'd be more of a gadget guy this year, and a Tyler Algier who I backed off of this because it was clear that Tyler Algier was not taking over the number 1 running back role, and I didn't really think, I don't believe Damian Williams is that guy to take a workload away. So maybe they're holding off, but I don't know. Great week for Cordero Patterson. We're just going to work backwards this time around since we started off with the Falcons. Even if some of this workload ends up getting taken like 60% of the rushing by Tyler Algier at some point in the season, he's still going to be involved in that pass game, and I think he would really bring a dynamic element to that pass game, being somebody that they could move around. But offenses only do that so much, can be a bit gimmicky to some extent too. So for now, this is what it looks like it's going to be. So that's exciting. And this is against a pretty good defense in New Orleans, but it was a really, really terrible first half for New Orleans, and the Falcons just kind of then sat on things for the second half and let them come back into it. It was a weird game script. Probably don't expect 22 carries every week for Cordero Patterson, but I would be excited about the 5.5 average there. And just the fact that he definitely has that locked down. Damian Williams, once again, injured. We'll see about that. Tyler Algier's the backup there. Probably in the Zamir White, Tyler Algier at least, especially if Damian Williams is down for a bit. It's in like the Zamir White, Rashad White category of backup guys to own. Then Drake London is a 5-reception, 74-yard guy. Now, Kyle Pitts owners, don't be frightened. This is good. This is what you wanted. You want a Drake London to come in there and scare the defenses and loosen things up, take some of the attention away from Kyle Pitts. This is a good thing. I know it wasn't a great week for Kyle Pitts owners. I'm sorry. It wasn't. New Orleans is a tough matchup against tight ends. Now, one of the podcast people that I listen to, and I like them, said, oh, New Orleans is not that great against tight ends. They just played bad tight ends. This is why you look at adjusted stats for defenses against certain positions, because they were still really good even against those bad tight ends in comparison to how those bad tight ends played against other teams. They were getting 30 yards against other teams on average, and only 10 yards on average against New Orleans, something like that. Those adjusted stats are huge, so then you don't come to some sort of bad conclusion on, oh, well, New Orleans just played against bad tight ends. Well, how did they do against them compared to other teams did against those tight ends? So, yeah, Kyle Pitts, not too concerned. I didn't like him this week anyways. I didn't expect this bad of a game. Things will be okay. They ran the ball a lot because they were just trying to sit on this early lead that they got from New Orleans way too quickly because they got excited that they were going to get a win, and it blew up in their face. Olamide Zaccheaus, I'm not rushing out to get him off of the waiver wire. Kaderil Hodge, he was one of the guys I was excited for in that they brought in on this offense. Him, Brian Edwards, and somebody else who ended up getting cut. Auburn, old Cincinnati receiver who had like one half of a year where he did really, really good for them. Auden Tate, they also brought in, and so I had actually been quite excited about that third wide receiver spot. Now I guess Olamide Zaccheaus has locked in his role, and it looks like Brian Edwards, Kaderil Hodge are splitting that role out on the outside on the offense there. So yeah, don't sleep on Kaderil, because this was a weird game and they did run the ball quite a bit. And frankly, the Falcons are not going to get in an early lead all season long. Interesting that he did better than Brian Edwards, and don't sleep on it. He's on the watch list for me. That's all I got for the Falcons. Let's move over to Baltimore versus I thought I had Baltimore versus Baltimore stats because Joe Flacco used to play for Baltimore, and then I'm an idiot. Baltimore does what we expected against New York Jets. Once again, just a poor start to this game for Baltimore. A weird game script type game, and that led to 59 passes for Joe Flacco. Oh, hey, let's back up a moment. New Orleans, I passed over Taysom Hill and his touchdowns. And look, if you want to take a chance on him, go right ahead. I'm not recommending it. That's all I got to say. On to this game. Relax, Mark Andrews owners. It's not the end of the world yet. I do believe he had more targets than his catches too here. 7 targets, so he did have a couple more targets. Even 7 targets is good for a tight end. And he'll have more in other games. Even the best tight ends last season, this is from where my research was, I said it earlier, even the best tight ends win only like 50% of the time if you were to just pit them up against every other starting tight end every week. It's not a reliable position, but what's great about the tight ends is that they have a much lower average. Like starting good tight ends, the 6th tight end has a much lower average than like the 6th wide receiver or running back in every single week, basically. But when they go off, when tight ends have huge weeks, they are similar to a number 1 wide receiver or a number 1 running back, whereas the 6th tight end was similar to like the 24th running back or 24th wide receiver, something like that. So there is just this huge advantage that you are almost guaranteed to get when your tight end has a huge week against your opponent's tight end. That's what's nice about him, but you can really only expect it to happen like in half of the games for the best of the tight ends, for the Kelseys and for the Mark Andrews. And then Isaiah Likely, frankly, I don't know what you're thinking if you started him. I don't think he's roster worthy, but 4 targets, that's more than I thought. So, I don't know what to tell you to do with him. I believe you picked him up understanding that he wasn't going to be a stud week 1. So, just hold off on it, because if he gets used like a wide receiver, he could be in a Devin Duvernay type position some weeks and get 4 receptions for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's definitely possible. And if he can kind of get those 4 or 5 targets from out in like the Kyle Pitts type of tight end kind of work, he could be a solid starting tight end. It's super encouraging for him, his future, that they're already getting him out there. I'd be interested to know what the snap share was. Ultimately, I would be more excited about Isaiah Likely, or I am at least, than I was coming into the week. I think you were grabbing him to hold on to him for the long term, so I wouldn't drop him based on this performance. 4 targets ain't too shabby, especially in this game, which was a weird game. There should be more. Well, see, that's the other thing about Baltimore. And that's why I'm not going to go heels up on Devin Duvernay here and get super excited about his game. The 30 attempts is pretty typical for Baltimore. They're a run-first team. And the other thing, I wanted to apologize for Devin Duvernay. I got some bad intel from somewhere. Don't remember anymore, so I can go back and yell at him. But I heard that Prochet was the guy getting all of the hype and talk internally, whatever the case, and just like looking good in the off season, and he was going to take over Devin Duvernay's role. And they're quite similar types of guys, and obviously that's not the case. So, sorry about that if someone took that advice. I hope you didn't grab Kenyon Drake thinking you got something amazing. This is probably what you can expect-ish. Not only did Justice Hill and Mike Davis have the same amount of carries, but apparently Justice Hill was like clearly in the RB2 role behind, for now, Kenyon Drake. And J.K. Dobbins maybe a few weeks, and we heard that about a week ago, so that turned out to be true. Devin Duvernay should be a fine wide receiver 5 this season. Rashad Bateman, he got bailed out with a long touchdown this game. He had 5 targets in this game. That scoreboard there, the box score chart here, doesn't quite do his target total justice there, at least. So don't be too afraid with Rashad Bateman. I think expectations were a little bit high for him coming into the season based on this offense and what they want to do. With those running backs hurt early on in the season, they might not be able to run. They might have to throw 35, 36 times some of these games if they have some better offenses to play against. So let's talk about that offense that threw the ball 59 times. 9 times. 307 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And then Michael Carter and Breece Hall. This is I don't think this is not what we were expecting, except Breece Hall's 10 targets was insane. So that's not going to happen every week. That is good and encouraging. Michael Carter's not making this easy for them to choose Breece Hall over him. And Breece Hall's not giving them a reason yet. Outside, I mean, he did fine, pretty productive, 6.3 yards out of the passing game. So he's not giving him a huge reason, though, to be the number 1 bell cow. Even running back, I don't know that bell cow is ever going to be a thing this season. Well, as long as Michael Carter's there. Michael Carter looked good, and it's week 5, week 6. We'll be hoping to see Breece Hall taking over some of that starting role a little bit more by then. Like, that's what we're hoping for. That would be great. And yeah, I don't know how to feel about things with Breece Hall. I haven't known how to feel about that. I drafted him. I didn't know how to feel about it the moment I drafted him. Not excited about how well Michael Carter did. Here is the other thing I wanted to bring up as far as these, like, at least 17 targets going to the running backs in this game. And this also goes for Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, those two receivers especially. When Zach Wilson comes back, there's a reason they got Garrett Wilson specifically at wide receiver. They wanted him. Zach Wilson can chuck the ball a deep, and Elijah Moore is pretty good intermediate to deep routes, and Garrett Wilson is your deep route guy. Don't think he's really known for checking down to running backs. I don't think he ignores them. Once Zach Wilson returns, I wouldn't expect such a high percentage of the targets to be going to Breece Hall, which is disappointing. I could use this kind of target share every single week. I think it was like 17% target share, which was the most. I don't expect that to continue once Zach Wilson's back, and I don't expect Breece Hall to take the starting job from Michael Carter before Zach Wilson's back. So not great news on Breece Hall, but I am far from freaking out, and don't sell him for pennies on the dollar either. You better be getting something pretty decent and probably something that helps your team right now, because that's what you need. If you don't need anything right now, just hold on to him. It's okay. Corey Davis, don't know why people were sleeping on him so much, except for the fact that we thought Zach Wilson would be the thrower here. So I think that's a pretty solid starting week for Garrett Wilson. Rookie Garrett Wilson, 4 for 52, with Joe Flacco being the one throwing the ball. Not too shabby. Elijah Moore, 5 for 49, right behind there. You would have liked to see more from Elijah Moore. I think that was promising for Garrett Wilson. And for the time being, while Joe Flacco is here, Corey Davis probably will be the most targeted wide receiver. I think that would make sense to me. Let me see these target shares. So Corey Davis with 9 targets, not too far behind Breece Hall there. Garrett Wilson with 8 targets, so that's promising. That's, good. I wish I could see each of these throws and see exactly what was behind them, and I haven't heard, people don't tend to spend too much time talking about New York Jets fantasy options. And 7 targets for Elijah Moore, so not a huge 7, 8, 9 targets for the wide receivers. You can work with that. Baltimore is no joke for a defense, and I do believe they lost an offensive lineman, but he was already the backup, and their starter should be coming back, I think, within like a couple of weeks. Tyler Conklin got the touchdown. That's what tight ends do, 4 for 14. I liked him for this game. I don't chase that. He's a waiver wire option, but he already was a waiver wire option. Don't go chasing touchdowns. Whoever you drop, he's going to have a touchdown within the next 2 weeks. It's just how it works for tight ends. They're fully reliant. Most of them are fully reliant on getting a touchdown to have a good week. Moving on to Jacksonville versus Washington. So Trevor Lawrence continues to miss. Some guys throw over their head sometimes, so that's going to go right into what I have to say about this J-Rob, Travis Etienne thing. First of all, I want to take a victory lap for myself. I did believe in J-Rob and that James Robinson would be the starting running back for this team. I lost some faith in myself here over the offseason, with everybody basically saying that's not the case, and with me remembering what kind of injury James Robinson had. But I kept enough faith, and here we are. 11 carries, 66 yards, 1 touchdown. That's awesome. The thing about James Robinson is there is going to be less running than there was last season. So I think he'll have a lower floor than he has had over the last 2 years, but probably maybe a similar ceiling. Just because they should be a better offense, so he should have more touchdown opportunities. But I do think Travis Etienne will cap off also some of James Robinson's. He won't have like 90% of the runs like he has for the last 2 seasons from the backfield. Travis Etienne will take some of that. So speaking on that, both of them were on the field for 31 snaps in this game. So that's something that you're just not going to see in this snap share. And you don't want to get too lopsided to that teams know exactly what you're going to do based on which running back's out there. So I wouldn't expect them to have such exclusive roles, I guess, for these running backs to where it's giving away things to the defense every single week. And look how productive Travis Etienne was with those 4 carries. And so that's the nice thing about Travis Etienne. He's going to be a Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones type guy where it's how productive he is with the opportunities that's really going to make him more fantasy relevant or not, depending on how he is. But showed some of that in this game. And the other thing for him is he did drop a touchdown reception, and he was overthrown on another touchdown reception. So he was not too far away from 2 touchdowns in this game. So don't be too afraid, Travis Etienne owners, James Robinson owners. Be happy. You do have yourself I would say an RB2 probably. So solid. I think I covered Trevor Lawrence would have liked to see a better game, but once again, new offense, still a young guy, probably has to get rid of some bad tendencies from last season, and I think he just needs to probably settle down. He tends to overthrow his guys, and I don't know that was a problem necessarily in college. If he can just get comfortable and be a little less excited, he'll be able to tame that down a little bit and hit his targets at a higher rate. Christian Kirk, this is what I expected. I don't need to say anything else. This is I expect he had 12 targets, I'm almost positive, and then 6 receptions, 117 yards. Sweet. That's, once again, I thought he was being way underdrafted, and I've been rewarded in part this week. Could have been better. But it's not going to be this good every week either. Zay Jones was a guy I said, hey, don't forget about him. And he did pretty good. He was giving me some concerns early on for Christian Kirk. And then Evan Ingram, 4 receptions, 28 yards. What was his target total? Yeah, I think you wanted to see at least 6 targets for Evan Ingram. So I'm not too excited about that. He's in he's in the same level as all of those tight ends who are rosterable, but they're also waiverable, whether you pick them up or not. He's just one of those other guys. It appears based on 1 week. So cool our engines. Things change a lot yet. Moving on to Washington, Carson Wentz blew up in this game. 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he had 6 carries for 12 yards. I can't imagine they want to do that all the time. Carson Wentz is going to blow up, and he's going to not blow up. That's just going to be a thing. Other than that, Antonio Gibson, the moment Brian Robinson went down, he became the guy. I don't think there should have been any question about that, and he did good with it. I am not worried for when Brian Robinson gets back. I think they want Brian Robinson to succeed, and I think Brian Robinson gives them what they want in this running back spot, just more of a traditional running back, and then Antonio Gibson can spell him and spell J.D. McKissick or take over the J.D. McKissick role. That's always possible. He was a wide receiver in college. But he had a good game, 7 receptions, 72 yards, and 14 carries, 58 yards. His first 4 weeks, put him in your lineups. He's a starting running back who gets most of the rushing workload and can catch the ball. He's probably not going to have 7 receptions every game, but who knows? And then J.D. McKissick sprinkled in here with 3 carries for 8 yards and 3 receptions for 20 yards. I would assume he might have had 1 or 2 more targets because I know I've heard that he still had that third down passing role in this game. Was not able to watch it. Terry McLaurin, 2 for 58 for a touchdown. Be happy you got that touchdown. He's going to have better weeks. Don't be too concerned. Dependent on what you expected from him. He wasn't getting drafted as high as he was last year, I don't believe. If he performs like he did last year, I don't think it'll really be a letdown as much as it will be I wish I had gotten more from him. And Curtis Samuel was the target leader here from Carson Wentz. 8 receptions, 55 yards. I did say to keep an eye on that, but like, when is he healthy? I heard he did limp off the field at one point. Got the touchdown. Yeah, he's not going to be a high yardage guy. He is a PPR guy, and will really be reliant on that touchdown in order to have a great game or break a big, which is always possible, but break a big play off of a short pass. He is rosterable. I don't mean to piss on him too much there. Logan Thomas, 3 for 45, 15-yard average there, not too shabby. Just coming back. He might not be at full health yet. I didn't see how he looked, and I haven't really heard anything about it. So just another tight end. Jahan Dotson, 3 for 40, 2 touchdowns. One of them was a sweet catch. I would expect him to have a higher average than 13.3 yards in a lot of games. Take those 2 touchdowns away, and it's 3 receptions for 40 yards. So, does Jahan Dotson like profile as a guy that you're going to be throwing to when you're near the goal line? I don't think so. I do believe one of those touchdowns was near the goal line. I mean, I guess Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, none of them really profile as like near goal line guys. So I don't know. Awesome that he got the 2 touchdowns. I jumped him up on my charts on game day, even moved him up higher as far as how I thought he would do this game. I would have liked to see a few more receptions than 3, but he's still a wait-and-see guy on my bench. He did have 5 targets, so that's nice. Moving on to Green Bay versus Minnesota. I could talk forever about the Green Bay game, and I would like it if Aaron Rodgers wants to give me a call. I got a couple of things to say to him about how to handle this these rookies, but I thought we would lose. If you didn't catch that, I think I've said that in 2 recordings by now. So not a good fantasy game. Now, my question is this in part due to the fact that Minnesota finally has some cornerbacks and they can actually cover? Or is this all because Green Bay is what Green Bay is? So I think it became clear. One thing that became very clear in this game is that Green Bay will not be able to win with Sammy Watkins. Allen Lazard wasn't in this game, but believe me, Allen Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Randall Cobb as their top 3 receivers. They are going to need to get something from Romeo Doubs, from Christian Watson, in order to be a Super Bowl team if they want to be, through the air. And I know Aaron Rodgers, not really, but I know him, in here. He's not going to let a running game win him a title. Some games he'll kind of let it take over, but it's pretty rare. If this team could lean on the run, that would be excellent, but they're just not going to. So Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, I think the staff will look back and they're going to say, yeah, we need to get these guys worked in here and get them productive and get them up to speed. And I don't think there's anything better to get a guy up to speed than throwing him into the fire in those live reps in the games and getting the targets to them. So don't ignore a Christian Watson when he drops that ball for the entirety of the game. So that's my plug for Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. The team's going to need them. So they are, I think, both rosterable as high upside guys for 6 weeks down the road. Now, you don't necessarily always want to be thinking 6 weeks down the road. Neither one of them showed that they're going to be excellent next week. If I had to pick one of them, it would be Romeo Doubs, and I am somebody who drafted and is keeping probably Christian Watson on my roster for now. So, Romeo Doubs looks like the guy who maybe the team trusts a little bit more right now, and I think that makes sense right now because Christian Watson hasn't really been able to practice with the team for like almost all of the preseason here. He got injured, I want to say, before preseason game 1 and really didn't come back to the team until this last week. So the fact that he was out on the field a fair amount anyways means that I think they already know that they have to get these guys involved. Things will look different with Allen Lazard, but he is not the answer. At least I don't believe so. Aaron Jones, 5 carries, 49 yards to A.J. Dillon's 10 carries for 45 yards. A.J. Dillon, 5 receptions and 46 yards to Aaron Jones, 3 receptions for 27 yards. I think Jones had like 2 more targets or something. I don't care, though. Man, I'm not scared if I have Aaron Jones. This team should realize that they need to run more, and coach said as much. But something that I didn't think I'd be saying after 1 week this year, A.J. Dillon may be the better running back for fantasy. It's possible. It's possible, because if you think about it, if you want a bruising running back to help slow down the game a little bit and to grind down the game and grind down their defense, that's A.J. Dillon. And I thought Aaron Jones would maybe get used in the slot a fair bit. They were out on the field at the same time, like for one play or something, and this would have been the game for that to happen. And it didn't really happen. I thought Aaron Jones would leave this game with like 7 targets. Aaron Jones owners may have overpaid for their guy, and A.J. Dillon owners may have gotten a deal, but nothing is set in stone there yet. Things are fluid with the entirety of that offense, and Aaron Jones will have his weeks. And, I mean, look at that, 9.8 yards per average carry for him. So they need to get the ball in their best players' hands more, and they need to get these rookies involved some. And Allen Lazard will be back, which will give a security blanket, but not a Devontae Adams style security blanket, to Aaron Rodgers. Other than that, Robert Tonyan, 3 for 36. This is the guy he is. He looked fine and healthy, so he's another tight end. He is one who can have 4 receptions for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. That will happen at some point in the season. This was the game for Sammy Watkins, so if you had him, if you believed in him, like I did, I didn't have him though, then go toss him. I'm sure he'll do something at some point, but disappointing. Randall Cobb, this is who he is now. He'll just add 1 to 2 more receptions some weeks and have 1 or 2 touchdowns even in a few games. And then on to the Vikings. This is what we expected from this. This is why Justin Jefferson was my number 1 overall pick. This is the new offense for the Vikings. They got some juice now. They don't have to just grind out games. They're going to be moving Justin Jefferson around. They're going to have more than 2 tight ends, 2 running, a fullback or running back, and 2 wide receivers. You can't have that many players on the field at once. Out every single play, they're going to have some 3 wide receiver sets. Yeah. The Vikings offense should be good this season. Justin Jefferson probably won't get this kind of, this good of a game every single week, but he'll have a lot of really good games. Everything that I thought this offense would be, it was this week, and just already for this season, they came in ready, and I think Dalvin Cook, that was pretty promising. I guess you hope for a touchdown there, but 3 receptions is nice for him. 90 yards, got a lot of that in closing time though, so there is a reason that I had Dalvin Cook a little bit down my chart, maybe 1 or 2 spots behind the average ADP for him, or maybe further. And this is a pass-first offense now. If this Vikings defense is for real, and you combine that with this offense, then Dalvin Cook should be nice, because he should be closing out games just like in this one. And the Green Bay Packers have been pretty good against Dalvin Cook most games. He has lit them up at least twice, I'm sure. But a lot of times they've bottled him up pretty good, and he got to him down the stretch there. On to the New York Giants versus the Tennessee Titans. Giants. Wan'Dale Robinson had a knee injury. He is not expected to miss much time. He is day to day, is what I saw shortly before starting recording, and it would have been good for Kadarius Toney had Wan'Dale gone down or be for longer, or if he's out for a week or two. But with 2 snaps in the first half, 7 snaps in total for the game, I'm pretty sure I got this one right in the offseason, and Wan'Dale Robinson is the new Kadarius Toney for this team. For whatever reason, they don't like him. He's a great athlete. Wan'Dale does too much of the same as Kadarius Toney does. So I just, the moment that happened, it felt to me like, they're going to go with their guy unless he just proves to be a bust of a pick. So, yeah. Kadarius Toney, don't hold on to him. Don't bother. Even if Wan'Dale Robinson's out for a week, there's other better prospects that you can find out there on the waiver wires. Daniel Jones, 2 touchdowns. They looked better. This was another game. It's kind of ugly to start out with. Looked better in the second half. This is an offense that should get better as the season goes along. Saquon Barkley, exactly what I thought. He's back. So you'll love to see that. Daniel Jones getting those rushing yards in. Some games should have higher efficiency on those rushes. So Sterling Shepard, somebody I moved up in my rankings once I knew he was going to be a starting. Not like I had him as high as he would have finished here, but 2 receptions, 71 yards, a touchdown. Not a lot of receptions. That was on 4 targets for Sterling Shepard. So you would like to see more targets than that. I'm still just really not going to trust any wide receiver for the Giants, and unless you're in a 2 QB league, I'm not trusting Daniel Jones either, unless you have to. Richie James, I don't know enough to say. He earned a role on that offense over Kadarius Toney, so there's that. I just don't know if this offense is going to be like somebody else every other week. So Ryan Tannehill, kind of I think what you'd expect from him most weeks. Won't always have 2 touchdowns. Will have an interception sometimes. Derrick Henry, a yucky day. It wasn't that great. It's another one with just started out slow for the Titans there. And what's exciting here would be Kyle Phillips, 6 receptions, 66 yards on 9 targets. So Kyle Phillips, if you're not familiar, was a well-liked prospect who had some elite traits. A little undersized, slot kind of guy coming out of college. I do get him a little bit mixed up with one other guy a little bit, so apologize if I described him incorrectly there, but I don't think so. So yeah, Kyle Phillips was thought to be a steal in the draft, and here's a guy to go get out on the waiver wire, especially if you're in a full PPR league. 33 pass attempts is probably maybe even a little bit more than they will average most weeks for the Titans, but not by a whole heck of a lot. I mean, that's awesome for Kyle Phillips. That's a nice hot start, and who knows? I don't want to say that the sky is not the limit for Kyle Phillips, but he might be a very nice little piece, like I said, especially in PPR. Jontrell Hilliard, this is probably his role, had a really great day. I don't think this is going to be something that you can predict when this will happen next. Maybe 6-7 weeks. And then Treylon Burks did get 3 receptions for 55 yards, so pretty productive on his receptions. That's good to see. He's a guy you're holding on to if you had him. And then Robert Woods, 1 for 13. Yucky. We didn't love him in the pre-draft process. For some reason, he just wasn't projecting out very well, and he's starting off with a bad start. He'll have better days, but I am concerned if I'm a Robert Woods owner, and I'm open to opening up a spot to try and find a stud wide receiver if I was relying on him. Las Vegas versus the Chargers. Derek Carr hyper-targeted Devontae Adams, which did give Darren Waller a few late big play opportunities. That's going to be the nice thing for Darren Waller. His efficiency may get higher, but I think he has a similar year to last year, best case scenario, and he's starting off in that best case scenario, 4 receptions for 79 yards. So I'm not pissed off at that. You hope for a touchdown. Josh Jacobs, only 10 carries for 57 yards, super surprising to me. And then 3 carries for Brandon Bolden with 7 yards. There is an injury updates on this game. Okay, for the Raiders, it is Brandon Bolden is the only one. He did have a hamstring injury. I don't know much else about that. Amir Abdullah would be the guy if you want potentially a touchdown, but 5 touches for 28 yards next week. Now, these, this isn't their head coach's system. Like, this was a little bit different this week. 3 receptions for the running backs. They're going to need to run more. I don't think this is how these stats are going to look a lot of weeks for this team. Devontae Adams, owners, get excited. Hyper-targeted once again, and I don't think they can do that every week, and they probably need to be a little bit more efficient with it if they do. So, yeah, we'll see. Hunter Renfrow owners, I would be scared about that. Not a pretty stat line from, I thought touchdowns down near the end zone would be a saving grace kind of worst case scenario for Hunter Renfrow. I had him pretty highly projected this week. Yeah, I don't know, weird game to some extent, but I am concerned about Hunter Renfrow because, like I said, I'm thinking the big change is more rushing attempts, if anything. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what to see. I want to see that offense next week. Going on to injuries for the Chargers. Keenan Allen, hamstring injury. The average, so I'll go over that a little bit. The average length of injury for a hamstring injury is 3 weeks, and it could be several months at the high end. And it could be less than 3 weeks, of course. But on average, it's 3 weeks. And upon return, production runs at about 90% of the player's average production. So when he comes back, then he should be inserted into your lineup. But there is also a 20% chance of recurring injury. So, if you're really strong at wide receiver and it's not the best matchup at all, you could always err on the safe side a little bit more. Keenan said that it was possible that he would be back for the next game when talking to a local media person after the game. And upon them reminding him that their next game is on Thursday, he changed that to saying a small possibility. So, not looking likely for Keenan Allen on Thursday. Josh Palmer is the guy that you want there. And much like Tyler Boyd, this is the reason why you draft a guy like that. So here is the chance if you already have him, and especially if you lost like week 1, he's probably not a bad guy to spend a few fab dollars on this week. Could be a good one. I don't know what the matchup is, and I am taking way too long to record this. So Justin Herbert had a good week. I heard it could have been even better. Austin Eckler, people, don't be concerned. Don't be 100% concerned, but I did feel like Sony Michel and Josh Kelly would come in and take some of the carries away from Austin Eckler, and that appears to have happened in this game. I don't recall too many games where the backup running backs last year got any more than like 3 carries if it was a competitive game like this. But still, there will be much better weeks for Austin Eckler, and he is like an Alvin Kamara and Aaron Jones type of guy, and he's been able to do it in the past where it's all about his efficiency upon his usage. Xander Horvath getting in there for a run, and around quarterback, couple runs there. Okay, moving on to Keenan Allen. Started out really great injury, so he'll be back someday. DeAndre Carter, 3 for 64 yards. I don't know, maybe he's not the replacement for Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer is the replacement, for Keenan Allen. Josh Palmer is the replacement for Keenan Allen. Should be. If you hear convincing evidence otherwise, then go right ahead and go with that. But it's Josh Palmer. And then Gerald Everett, I told you all about him. So 3 receptions, 54 yards, 1 touchdown. I feel like he got targeted a little bit more than that. 4 targets. So once again, would like to see that target total a little bit more. Nice thing about being on this offense compared to having a tight end on some of the other offenses, think like an Evan Ingram, is that we know that this offense will get down there, will give opportunities for passing touchdowns, and that's what you need, especially at the tight end position. So Gerald Everett, he's another guy, but he's on the higher end of that another guy type tier, if nothing else. Oh, Mike Williams, bad day. Well, I tried warning y'all about Mike Williams, and that he is not a... He'll have great weeks. If you have Mike Williams on your team, hey, next week might be a great week for him. You should have known that you were getting a boom or bust kind of guy, and I just don't think he's in every week. He's not somebody I would want to rely in my lineup every week, nor is he somebody I would want to guess what weeks that he's going to blow up in. But you're in a position like that, then you got to live and die by the sword with him. He should be fine several weeks, but depending on, don't rely on that if you're already thin at wide receiver anyways. If you don't have anybody that you would even think about starting over him, go and look for one on the waiver wire. There are some guys this week. And then moving on to Kansas City versus Arizona. Let's see here. For Chiefs injuries, we had Harrison Butker do something with, I think, his leg. Got carted off the field. He's fine. He came back in the game. I mean, keep an eye on that. You never know. Sometimes guys come back in the games and then it's not good later on. Patrick Mahomes, his non-throwing hand, if you did hear about a hand injury like I did, but were not notified, it was his non-throwing hand, so that is good. Obviously, he blew up this week. If you are a box score kind of guy and you're watching this, don't worry about this Isaiah Pacheco. That was almost all late. He did good with it, but even there, hey, look at that, 6 yards per carry for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So what I would have to say about Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this game is he clearly has that number 1 role. We knew that coming into this week. There were some concerns with that in the offseason, but by the time that we knew that Rojo wasn't taking over, we pretty much knew that we just had to accept the fact that Clyde would be the starter again. And this is why I drafted Clyde pretty happily last season. Touchdown opportunities. Yeah, even if he's not the best running back in the world, he's on an offense that's going to get down near the goal line or just catch it and like he did in this game, get a receiving touchdown, whether it's near the goal line or from a ways away, I don't care. There's going to be touchdowns scored. And so they didn't really come his way last season too much. But that is the upside to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Good game for him. I'm hopeful, if I'm a Clyde Edwards-Helaire owner, that this is just the start. Not a bad start. But I wouldn't quite put him into like he's a must-start guy quite yet, except for the fact that he has this ceiling, which is always great because of those touchdown opportunities. Travis Kelce, I told you this would be a great week for him. It was. I've already told you I don't think he's number 1 tight end this season. I do have him as the number 2 tight end, but I am concerned as the season goes along. But the season's not going along yet. We're in the early parts of the season, and as this offense, as Patrick Mahomes gets more comfortable with these other receivers, Juju, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, as he develops, I do think that Travis Kelce will even disappear a few games this season. So a great game for Travis Kelce, promising game for Juju Smith-Schuster. You liked what you saw from him. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I expected more. I don't know how you feel if you drafted him and this is what you got from him. I do believe he caught all of his targets if he has 4 receptions here. He'll have big games. I don't think he bottoms out like a Mike Williams, but he has a Mike Williams ceiling within individual games. It'll be nice to get another sample from this offense and see all the fantasy points again next week. Sky Moore, people, I hope you were drafting him for late season if you drafted him. I didn't even love him for that, but hey, 1 reception, 30 yards. Nice target there. Nice reception there. Moving on to Arizona. Kyler Murray went, this was an ugly game for Arizona. If there is a team other than Dallas, like Dallas has had the worst luck this offseason, and then I think at least leading into this week, into this game, Arizona was right up there, and Baltimore has kind of continued their luck from last season, been kind of a rough start and off season for them too. So yeah, I was pretty down on Kyler, and I was happy with what I got for him at the end of this game. You know, I was excited after I drafted him. I was excited looking at this matchup, and every day there was outside of the off-season news, because I didn't really let that bother me too much. But then when we piled that on to some of the things leading up to this game, just looking like everybody's out, offense and defense, it just wasn't looking too pretty. So I think having Rondale Moore back in this offense when he comes back will be huge. Zach Ertz probably wasn't at full health for this game. I don't know. 2 receptions, 14 yards, 1 touchdown. I don't know what to tell you with him. I wasn't extremely high on him. Obviously, he is a tight end to own, and this is another one of those cases where this is an offense that you don't mind having guys on because usually they'll be clicking. But this may be a slower start for this offense than it has been in previous years. This may be the year where Kyler flips his script and he's a better late season quarterback than he was early season. Marquise Brown, 4 receptions, 43 yards, a touchdown. Yeah, I don't know if y'all were expecting AJ Green from, like, not AJ Green literally. I realize he's on this team, but like I don't know what people expect from Marquise Brown, but he's Marquise Brown, and he'll be a lot better for this team the more weapons they have. He's another weapon that can really make this team scary. When he has to do it on his own, I think it's a little tough. Probably especially in this system. And Greg Dortch, somebody that Arizona has loved all off season, won the spot over Andy Isabella. So if you were an Andy Isabella believer, get off that. Like 2% of the world, the U.S. That's a Andy Isabella believer. But I am not chasing Greg Dortch. There will be wide receivers coming back throughout the season. So I don't know if it's like another really high scoring type matchup next week and Rondale Moore is not coming back. Greg Dortch could be like a 1 week loner kind of guy, I suppose. And Eno Benjamin made it very clear if there was any question left, and there wasn't quite for me, but this was the confirmation. Eno Benjamin is that backup to own behind James Conner. James Conner's stat line doesn't look great in this game, and once again, it just got out of hands for them. So expect better looking days from James Conner, but he did get the touchdown to at least salvage the day. AJ Green, this would have been a game. I think he has proven he's washed. I was not off of the AJ Green bandwagon. I might have been driving it even going at about 8 miles an hour. Yeah, you can drop AJ Green if you had him. And finally, our last matchup, Tom Brady here, 18 of 27, 212, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. It was a yucky game. Dallas had a really good defense last year. I'm sure they're still quite good. Dallas was never really a threat to force the Buccaneers offense into like trying harder. They probably all week things were in flux. This was week 1. Tom Brady's been gone from the team for a while, so I don't know how much I want to take away from this game other than Leonard Fournette looked good. Rachaad White really didn't get too much workload in a game where he could have, maybe gotten, let's say, 9 carries, and I'm sure some of this is backloaded. I mean, I know at least a few of these carries were really late in the game for Rachaad White, and I don't really recall seeing him earlier in the game. So, he didn't sub in for Leonard Fournette. So he is just purely that, in case Leonard Fournette goes down, kind of guy at this point, it would appear. And that's what you're holding on to him for. But this would have been the game, if he was more than that we would have seen that. So, no concerns for Leonard Fournette and his usage. Moving on to the receivers, we've got some injuries in this game. So Mike Evans, 5 receptions, 71 yards, a touchdown. Good game for him. They didn't really need a whole lot more in this. Julio Jones, 3 receptions, 69 yards, laid out for a real nice catch to get a lot of that yardage, or a good chunk of it. But let's get to the injuries. So Chris Godwin had to go out of this game with a hamstring injury, and I would say similar things could be said about his injury as was said about Keenan Allen's injury. So average is 3 weeks. Could be less with a really, really minor injury, and the most severe hamstring injury could be a few months. Doesn't look like it's going to be that. We'll get to that in a second. So this is my opinion. I do expect that they will be as cautious as possible, I guess, considering that they already rushed him back, which from his multi-ligament injury last season, which is likely what led to this injury, I would think, overcompensating his gait in some way, just favoring his legs to prevent from injuring his ligaments, not trusting that fully yet, and just leading to some sort of weird movement and that injury. So my Julio stock would be up in the short term for sure. He should be owned. And the other thing is that there is some good news for Godwin that came out today. Somebody said that it is not as severe as they initially feared. Now, like I said, the long timeline is several months. So is that what they feared? If it's not as severe, does that mean it's only 1 month? Good news that it's not worst case scenario. But what were they fearing? We don't know. Considering that it's feared, I would say they were probably fearing much longer. So could be at least a month here. I would think it's a month minimum for Godwin, because even if it's a 2 to 3 week, I could see them taking an extra week to make sure that he can get healthy. They need him for the late season. Cowboys injuries. We saw Dak Prescott go out with a hand injury, and I think there was another O-lineman that went down in this game. So Dallas's bad luck just continues, and Dak Prescott's injury was expecting to be a 6 to 8 week injury. So it is Cooper Rush time. Just to let you know, in his lone start last season, wide receivers had 18 of the 24 receptions on the team. 18 of them were from wide receivers. That was in a game versus Minnesota, which I do believe had a lot of struggles at the cornerback position last year, if I remember correctly. So just a heads up on that. Maybe not the worst matchup for those wide receivers when they did this. CeeDee Lamb did have 6 of those 18 targets for 112 yards. Cowboys players equal more matchup dependent. So, okay. Ultimately, how do I feel about this? Well, I would say that the Cowboys players are just more matchup dependent than they were previously, and their ceilings are lower than they were previously as a team you'd just expect less from in general. We covered the Bucs. We got the injuries. Ezekiel Elliott I got to see a little bit of this, obviously. Zeke Elliott looked much better this year than he did last year, and I was totally wrong about Tony Pollard. So, man, I almost want to say Tony Pollard's like droppable. I'm sure he's not. I mean, he's a great backup to own at the very least, but I wouldn't be firing him up and trusting him for sure next week. And other than that, Noah Brown, I did say pre-game when I was on here live, by the way, answering start-sit questions to the 3 questions that I got. So just a heads up, I'm live if you're still listening here, and on Sunday mornings. And Noah Brown, I did say when we got the official word on somebody sitting out that Noah Brown stock was up. I'm not going out for that. Dalton Schultz thought he would have a good week. Had a good week. CeeDee Lamb, yuck, yuck, yuck. He needs to be better for this team. That's true. That is all I've got for now. I'll be back after the Sunday night games. Also, please feel free to leave any questions that you have in the comments about waiver wire questions, even start sit if you're watching this late, whatever the case. So I'll be back.